He once stood in that very courtroom wearing handcuffs. Now he stands there wearing a judge's robe. But when a young black man is dragged before him, trembling with fear, what this former inmate does next stuns the entire courtroom. Was it justice, or something far more powerful? This is the true story of a man who rose from a prison cell to the highest seat in the courtroom, and how one life-changing decision turned a trial into a moment of redemption. You won't believe what happened when their eyes met. Watch until the end, because this one act of mercy rewrote both of their destinies. The courtroom fell silent. Every eye turned as the doors creaked open. In walked a tall black man in a crisp black robe. His presence demanded attention. He did not flinch beneath the stares. He walked past the wooden benches where jurors once judged him, past the pews where strangers whispered years ago, and toward the bench, his bench, the same courtroom where he had once stood in handcuffs. Now he stood in authority. The scent of polished oak and leather-bound law books filled the air, but he could still smell the cold sweat from his first trial. He could still feel the metal cuffs cutting into his wrists, and the judge's voice echoing. 20 years. He had been just 19, charged with armed robbery, a crime he did not commit. The memory pressed on his chest like a weight. His palms were sweating now, not from fear but from memory. He blinked. The gavel in his hand felt heavier than it should. Not with wood, but with justice. He looked out at the courtroom. A young man was standing before him, dark-skinned, nervous, shoulders tense, eyes darting. He looked just like he once had, and suddenly, he could hear his mother crying. Back then, in the back row, clutching her Bible, begging the heavens for mercy. No one had listened. But he did. Now, the young man before him trembled. He had no lawyer, just a public defender who barely knew his name. And that was when the judge, the former inmate, saw something. A shift. An invisible thread pulled tight across time. A chance to break a cycle, to rewrite the ending. But the courtroom clerk whispered, "Your Honor," and he realized his fingers were gripping the gavel too tightly. He let go. Inhale. Exhale. He leaned forward, voice steady. "State your name for the record." But in his mind, he heard his own name echo back. From that day, from that cell, from that number they gave him, he was no longer 300. He was Judge Elijah Carter. And this was the moment everything changed. The young man opened his mouth, and then, his voice cracked.
Marcus Taylor.
Barely above a whisper. He looked like he had not slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His jeans were torn. His hands trembled as he clutched the edge of the table. Judge Carter studied him. Not with judgment, but with understanding. A cold draft drifted through the old vents overhead. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly. Outside, the sky was gray. Rain tapped against the courthouse windows. Soft, persistent, like time itself pressing in. Elijah's heart thudded in his chest. Not with fear, but with memory. He saw himself in Marcus's sagging shoulders. He saw himself in the hopeless eyes. "Do you understand the charges against you?" he asked gently. Marcus nodded. His lips barely moved. "Possession with intent," the prosecutor chimed in. Smug, confident, like it was just another day, just another number, another conviction. The gavel rested quietly in Elijah's hand. Its weight reminded him of chains, not on his wrists, but on his mind. He remembered the cell, the rusted bunk, the smell of bleach and sweat, the muffled cries in the night. He remembered the pain, the silence, the year, and he remembered the promise he made. "If I ever get out," he had whispered it to the ceiling of his cell, "I will not waste this life." And now, that life sat in front of him, waiting, shaking. Marcus's mother was there too, standing in the back, her eyes swollen, her hands clenched in prayer, just like Elijah's mother once did. He felt the room tighten, the weight of time, the breath of justice, the edge of something bigger than himself. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and made a decision that would shock the courtroom. "I am ordering a recess," he said, his voice firm, unshaken. The bailiff blinked. The prosecutor looked confused. But Elijah stood and stepped down from the bench. He walked toward Marcus. Step by step, the click of his shoes echoed like thunder. And when he reached him, he looked him in the eye. Truly look. Come with me, he said. Marcus froze.
The room gasped.
Even the stenographer paused, but Elijah nodded and led him out of the courtroom, into the hallway, into a story no one expected. Marcus hesitated at first. His feet felt like concrete, but something in Judge Carter's voice, calm, certain, made him follow. The hallway was dim. The old courthouse smelled of paper, dust, and history. Their footsteps echoed against the marble floor. Each step felt heavier, not from fear, but from the weight of something unknown. They reached a wooden door at the end of the corridor. Judge Carter paused. He turned the knob slowly. The door creaked open. Inside was a small room. Books lined the walls, framed diplomas, photos of former students, lawyers, and second chances. This was not a judge's chamber. It was a sanctuary. Marcus stepped in, confused, eyes darting from wall to wall. Elijah closed the door behind them. The sound felt final, then silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Elijah walked to a low shelf, pulled out a photo. He handed it to Marcus. The young man took it with shaking hands. It was a mugshot. Elijah's mugshot. Marcus stared, eyes wide. His lips parted, but no words came. That was me, Elijah said softly. 20 years ago. Marcus blinked. Still silent. I was 19. Just like you. I stood in that courtroom, right where you stood. I wore the cuffs. Heard the sentence, watched my mother cry. Marcus's mouth moved, but nothing came out. So Elijah continued. I served 10 years before the truth came out. DNA. A confession. A crooked detective. My name was cleared, but my time was gone. He sat down across from Marcus, his eyes steady. I had every reason to give up, but I did not. I studied law in prison, got my degree after release, worked case after case pro bono from a church basement. Marcus finally spoke. Why are you telling me this? His voice was a whisper, a boy's voice, a tired voice. Because I see you, Elijah said. I see what the world refuses to see. I see your pain, your fear, your potential. Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. He tried to hide them, but Elijah did not look away. He let the boy feel it. All of it. Marcus, he said. You do not have to be another number. You do not have to become what they expect you to be. You can fight, learn, rise. I will help you. Marcus stared at him, as if trying to believe this was real. Then his knees gave out. He dropped to the floor, head in his hands, sobbing, not from guilt, but from relief, from being seen. He had never been seen like this before. Not by a teacher, not by a counselor, not even by his father. Only now, by a man who had worn the chains himself. The judge knelt beside him, placed a hand on his back, not as a symbol, but as a promise. Outside the rain fell harder, but inside, a storm had passed, and something brighter was beginning. Marcus wept until his shoulders stopped shaking, until the weight in his chest loosened just enough for him to breathe. Judge Carter stayed beside him, quiet, present, not with answers, but with understanding. When Marcus finally looked up, his eyes were red, but there was something new in them. A flicker, a spark, hope. Elijah stood and reached into a drawer. He pulled out a small worn notebook. Its cover was cracked and soft from use. He placed it in Marcus's hands. These are pages from my time inside, he said. My thoughts, my pain, my dreams. Marcus ran his fingers over the cover, like it was something sacred. Elijah looked him in the eye. I wrote my way out. You can too. Whatever pain you carry, turn it into purpose. Whatever rage you hold, shape it into reason. Marcus swallowed hard. His voice came low. I do not know where to start. You just did, Elijah said. He walked back toward the door, then paused. There is a program I run after school: mentorship, job training, scholarships. I want you in it. Marcus blinked. Why me? Elijah smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. Because someone once asked me the same thing, and I would not be here. He tapped his own chest. If they had not answered, Marcus clutched the notebook tighter. The pages crackled under his grip. For the first time in a long time, He stood tall. Elijah opened the door. The hallway beyond looked different now. Bright, full of possibility. They stepped out together. Side by side. Not judge and defendant, but man and man. The courtroom was still waiting, but something had shifted. The prosecutor glanced up, confused. The clerk tilted her head. The room buzzed with curiosity. Elijah returned to the bench. Marcus stood beside the defense table. Taller now. Straighter. Different. Elijah raised the gavel, eyes sweeping across the courtroom, then landed back on Marcus. This court believes in justice, he said. But today, he looked deep into the boy's eyes. We begin with mercy. A hush fell over the room. The kind that holds breath. The kind that bends time. Even the prosecutor's pen stopped moving. Marcus stared at the floor. Then slowly lifted his eye. There was disbelief. Then confusion. Then something like courage. Elijah's voice carried again. Clear. Measured. This court will defer sentencing. Instead, the defendant is ordered into a rehabilitation and mentorship program under judicial supervision. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. One juror gasped. Another leaned forward, squinting. But Elijah stayed calm. Steady. Firm. He looked at the young man before him. This is not a free pass. This is a second chance, earned, not given. Marcus nodded slowly. The words sank deep. He could feel them in his spine, in his skin, in the places life had tried to harden. The bailiff stepped forward, unsure. Elijah raised a hand. No cuffs. Let him walk out the way he came in. On his own feet, by his own choice. Marcus turned. He saw his mother in the back row. Tears streaming, hands clasped over her mouth. She nodded at him, trembling. He took one step, then another, and walked out of the courtroom. A free man. Not because he had escaped punishment, but because someone had seen the man beneath the mistakes. Elijah watched him go. Felt something shift inside. Like the closing of a wound. Like the answering of a prayer once shouted into the dark. He turned back to his bench, sat down slowly, and whispered to himself, "This is why I came back." Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. And somewhere down the long marble corridor, footsteps echoed. Steady, hopeful, unchained. Those footsteps faded into the distance, but their rhythm stayed in Elijah's mind. A quiet beat of promise. A reminder that change was not just possible, it was happening. One life at a time. The courtroom resumed its usual hum. Files shuffled. Chairs creaked. The next case was called. But Judge Carter remained still for a moment longer. His hand rested on the gavel, not to strike, but to remember. He glanced toward the gallery, saw faces that reminded him of the world outside these walls. A world where people still judged by skin, by background, by the worst things someone ever did. But Elijah had chosen another way. Not soft, not easy, but just. His eyes met the court clerk's. "Let us proceed," he said quietly. And the next case began. But even as the day unfolded, as new names were read and new decisions made, his thoughts drifted to Marcus, to where he might be now. Maybe stepping into the mentorship center. Maybe sitting with other young men, hearing for the first time that their futures were not fixed, that their stories could be rewritten, that their scars were not the end, but the beginning. And somewhere deep in the city, as streetlights flickered on, Marcus opened that old notebook, the one Elijah had given him. Its pages were filled with anger, with questions, with raw truth. He flipped through them slowly, then turned to a blank page, picked up a pen, and wrote his first words. Not as a criminal, not as a case number, but as a man. Beginning again. He sat in silence for a while. The pen hovered above the page. The room was quiet, save for the hum of a street lamp outside the window. Then, he began to write. Not about the arrest, not about the fear, but about the judge. The moment their eyes met, the moment he felt seen, not sentenced. Each word poured from a place he had long buried. Pain, shame, but also hope. It did not come out perfect, but it was honest. And for the first time, Marcus felt something he had never known. Purpose. He closed the notebook gently, set it on the desk like something sacred. Then he looked at his reflection in the darkened window. And for the first time in years, he did not see a mistake. He saw a man in the making. Across the city, Judge Elijah Carter sat alone in his chambers. The courthouse was quiet. The sun had set, but a small light burned on his desk. He reached into his drawer and pulled out another notebook. Blank. Fresh. He opened the first page and smiled. Then he wrote 4 simple words. For the next one, because there would be more. More Marcuses. More days like today. More chances to show the world that justice could be more than punishment. It could be redemption. And so, from jail to judge, the journey continued. Not just for Elijah, not just for Marcus, but for everyone who believed that a broken past did not mean a broken future. Only the beginning of a better one.